Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Jane Fischer and the most remarkable story about her daughter Suzy. And there's a book, there's a lot to take in, and it really is a remarkable story, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed listening. Welcome to the David Watson podcast, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to have a second cup of tea. I do appreciate that, and my rambling, but how are you today?
Fine. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. And you were saying the weather in New Jersey is really good right now.
The weather is beautiful today. It's been a very hot summer, but today is actually a day where you could take a deep breath and enjoy the air.
Yeah, because I take it if it gets too hot, that kind of gets a bit stifling.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's been a very hot summer and humid. Very, very humid. Difficult to stay outside. The air quality's been quite bad too, but we're grateful for today.
Yeah, because it is going to change in the next couple of months. That's for certain.
Yes.
So you and I today are going to talk about your daughter Suzy. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Before we get to Suzy, who are you? What do you do?
Okay. So I am the proud mother of Suzy. See, she is my middle child. And I'm also the very proud mother of my daughter Beth, who is Suzy's older sister, and my son Ben, who is Suzy's younger brother. I have 4 lovely grandchildren also. And I just retired about a year ago, and I taught for many years. Then I went on to get my master's as a special education teacher, which just seemed to fit in with my life. And then I became a learning consultant, which is part of in New Jersey, child study team where I evaluate children who have learning disabilities or other kinds of problems, and then create a program for them. So I've been a very busy lady.
Yeah,
for
definitely sounds like it. And
a
sorry,
lot of years.
Beth is the oldest, and the youngest, your son?
Beth is my oldest. My son is his name is Ben,
Ben.
and I've been very blessed with 3 wonderful, wonderful children. Not perfect, but nobody is.
Well, your grandchildren are. According to my mum, grandchildren are perfect.
They are absolutely as close to perfect as it gets.
My mum constantly reminds me of the perfection of grandchildren. So
Yes. They truly are. They are the loves of my life, and I wear them on my neck. I don't know if you could see my
yeah, I can just see that. Yeah.
Sydney, Alyssa, Cole, and Bailey, and they're my joy. They're my heart. My children too, but my children, grandchildren, it's a different
I
level.
know. I know it. When my mum's grandchildren came along, you can
Yes,
just see it's like, it's not that I don't love you, and it's not that I'm not proud of you, but these
but
can't disappoint
yes,
me like you did. Do you know?
exactly,
Yeah. And she meant
exactly.
it with love. I just,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely,
but there was just something about grandchildren that was just perfectly packaged in a way her own children wasn't. And
absolutely.
she likes to remind me of that, as
I
she
do
should,
too.
as she should. So that's so. What do Beth and Ben do?
Beth is a teacher. She kind of, well, it was interesting. I said she followed in my tracks. She was in college. She was majored in advertising, and I had said to her, "Why don't you take a few education courses?" And she said, "Mom, I don't want to teach. That's for you, not for me." Well, come full circle. After working in advertising for a while, she went back and took some education courses, and she's a wonderful, wonderful teacher. I always say the better the teacher, the harder the class, because we always put in the most difficult
Mm.
children with the best teachers. So she is a teacher. She has 2 wonderful, wonderful daughters, teenage daughters, Sydney and Alyssa, who are also the light of my life. Ben is he had worked as an ombudsman for learning disabled young people. And he's he's a wonderful, kind, sensitive young man. And he did that for a few years, and now he decided he went. My husband has a business, and he now works in the business with my husband.
Oh, that's nice.
And he has two, a 9-year-old Bailey and a 6-year-old Cole. And he's an unusually kind, sensitive, wonderful man. And Susie just adores her brother and sister for a good reason.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that's nice, and it's and one of the reasons I asked is because just to give you some background, I have actually worked. I worked at a day centre for a couple of years for adults with learning disability and various different disabilities, and currently for the last sort of nearly 20 years, I guess, I've specialised in head injury rehabilitation, and
Oh, yes.
my sister's oldest boy is autistic and does need so my niece, her youngest daughter, as you can imagine, they're as you would know, growing up with for them can be not I was about to say I don't mean difficult, but it is difficult for them, because as much as you can do for them, the one, like with Mason, you have to make sure he's okay first, and whatever you're doing, whether you're going on holiday, whether you're going to the shops, okay, what are we doing with Mason? And it sounds so terrible, like they make him sound like the dog, but I don't mean it like that. But you have to make sure that Mason understands what we're doing and where we're going and why. And he is brilliant. But Lillian is 7. She's 14. She's 7 years younger than him, and it's hard for her. It's harder for her because you can't just drop everything because you want to do something spontaneous with Lillian if Mason isn't taken into consideration. So, it
absolutely. And I truly, I say this to parents and to professionals all the time. If you think that the siblings are going to get through this, and I have wonderful children, but if you think they're going to get through this unscathed, you're only deceiving yourself.
I remember when Lillian was much younger, and just having a conversation because there was something and I can't remember what it was. And it was just because Mason being autistic, I think they were playing or something, and then once he got to well, I'm done now. He just got up and went, and she's just, we're still playing. It's my turn and stuff like that. And of course, Mason doesn't care because he's just I've finished. And it was just having that conversation with her, because she's like, it's not fair, and you've got to kind of, it's difficult as an adult to say, yeah, you're right, it's not. But that's who he is, and he's always going to be like that. And unfortunately for you, you're right, it's not fair. And there's going to be lots of circumstances in this life that you have with your older brother that are not fair, where you're going to feel like he's being prioritised, because he is. And it frustrated me at times if people try to pretend that's not what's happening. But we're not prioritising out of favouritism, we're prioritising out of necessity.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, your brother has to be prioritised because of his autism. But fortunately, where we're really lucky is that Lillian is just been phenomenal about that, especially as she's gotten older. So
yes.
So how is Suzy?
Well, Suzy, and again, was born from minute one, was born with disabilities, which I can talk about a little bit more.
Yeah.
And for the most part, as I say, she was my second child. Beth was 2.5 years old, and it was a very uneventful pregnancy. No one expected her to have any problems. I certainly didn't. And from the minute she was born, I didn't know, because she was a breech birth, and they had to give me anesthesia, and I didn't see my baby. I wanted to see my baby, and what I didn't know was that she was born with extra digits on both hands, which in and of itself is not a problem. They removed them the next day. But her head was not in proportion with her body. You couldn't see it by looking at her, but the measurements was the proof. And she had a very poor suck. She couldn't latch on to a bottle. And in and of itself, none of these characteristics were a problem. But put together, it indicated that my baby had problems. And it wasn't until later that night, I kept saying, "Where is my baby? Give me, I want to see my baby." It wasn't until she was born at about 8:15 on a Friday night, and it wasn't until 2 o'clock in the morning when they brought her to me and they put her in my arms, and all I could see was this beautiful, beautiful bundle. It was love at first sight. I didn't see any issues with this sweet, tiny, precious little girl. But then the pediatrician came in and he started to tell me problems. They tried to put her to my breast to nurse, and she couldn't latch on. She just had they didn't have the ability to nurse. And they started to tell me they were concerned about a lot of these anomalies and what they would all mean later on. And that's how her life began in the first 24 hours of her life. My brother, who was doing a residency at Montefiore Hospital in New York in pediatrics, he came in with the pediatrician, and I will never forget his face. It was torment, because they had to start telling me that my baby had some significant problems. So that's how her life began, and that's how my life with her began. And for the first 3 months, we didn't know whether she had any sight. She wasn't following light at all. We went to a doctor at Columbia Presbyterian in New York, a pediatric neurologist, who basically they did all kinds of tests, and he basically told me that he didn't think my child would ever walk, talk, learn. And he said, from the goodness of his heart, he said, "Look, you have a 2.5-year-old, you have a husband. Maybe the best thing to do would be to find a residential placement." And I was all of 24 years old. I had no idea what I had to do, but I knew that this was my baby and she wasn't going to a residential placement. She was coming home with me, and whatever potential she had, we were going to fight and find it and maximize it. And honestly, David, I don't forget, there wasn't any Google, there wasn't any internet. I couldn't go home and start, finding all this information. I was really like on an island by myself. And I had a 2.5-year-old Beth who needed me desperately. She was an anxious child. I was bringing the sister home to her who was so needy. She needed me, but I started to look. I searched and I searched through phone calls, through resources, and I just made up my mind I could buy stock in Kleenex and cry for the rest of her life or begin to fight. And I chose fight. And that's how Suzy's life began. We did find, and now it's very commonplace, but 51 years ago, Suzy was just 51, July 18th. 51 years ago, it was unheard of, but we found an infant stimulation program at Hunterton Hospital in Flemington. It was about an hour and a half from my house, and we drove every day. And basically, it was to stimulate and to teach me how to work with my baby and to stimulate those areas of the brain that were intact and perhaps take over for those areas that were damaged. And I now, many years later, who have studied the brain and gone back to school, I now believe in that. I believe that there is a lot of plasticity in the brain.
Oh, massive.
And that, yeah, yeah, and it's not that I believe, it's now, been proven. And Suzy, all her milestones were late. Well, she didn't sit until she was a year old. She didn't walk until she was 4. No one understood her speech except me. And it was almost like we had a foreign language going on between us. But she always had this determination. She was always a fighter. And since she had a 2.5-year-old sister, who I always say Beth was probably her first and best therapist in this life, because she included her in everything. She played stores, she played dancing schools, she played everything that Beth did, and Beth's friends would come over. Suzy was included. So without even realizing it, Beth was really exposing Suzy to a lot of language. And, she was a tremendous, tremendous advocate for Suzy. She still is all her life. And so Suzy always knew what she should be doing. She was always exposed to what should be happening, walking, talking, playing. Unfortunately, her body, her brain didn't always allow her to do, but she always struggled to try to do. And she always had goals. Even, I mean, she didn't realize they were called goals, but she would always strive to do what Beth was doing. And she was a fighter. She still is. She was a fighter. So we continued on with infant stimulation, and then we started a program at Easter Seals, where she had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and while this was all going on, the family dynamics are so affected with a child with special needs. My husband and I mean, it affects a marriage, it affects relationships with grandparents. My husband was in denial. We would walk out of a doctor's office and he would say, well, Dr. So-and-so said she'll be fine. She has some problems. But I said, what? Were you there? Did we hear the same person? She has severe problems. And the grandparents kept saying, oh, don't listen to them. The doctors don't know what they she's adorable. She'll be fine. And I felt like I was alone. What was wrong with this world? What was wrong with this situation? And it took a toll. It took a toll on our marriage, on relationships. I was totally enmeshed in helping Suzy and trying to be there for Beth. And financially, we didn't have coverage for a lot of the therapies that she needed. And my husband finally, we went for help, and I stress the importance of that. You need support, and sometimes you need marriage counseling. And part of the Easter Seals program was they had this wonderful psychologist who worked with my husband and with me, to try to repair, some of the damage. And I think the eye opener for my husband was one Saturday, they had all the fathers. It was a support group for fathers. And they had all the fathers bring their children. And not with moms, just the dads. And the psychologist worked with the fathers. And I think for my husband, just seeing Suzy in this group of other children who were also very, very impaired, had severe disabilities, for him it was an eye-opener, And he came home that day and he said to me, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that we're going to do everything we can to help her. And you can only have one captain. That was what he said to me. You can only have, so you are the captain of this ship. He said, I will support you. I will work very, very, very hard to be able to help you financially, but you will I won't interfere with your decisions with Suzy. And for us, that was really a turning point.
I think
I give him a
that's
lot of credit.
probably something people don't understand. That can be difficult. So we're talking mid-70s, aren't we?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Right. So, but just because I kind of completely understand your husband, and because I work, obviously I run care teams, and there's a very male perspective. You can let me be in charge, and I don't want your opinion, or
yes,
I can support you, but you make the decisions.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think sometimes people don't, like I said, I think it's really amazing that you and your husband had enough insight to say, or enough love. I don't know which probably, because in the midst of chaos, people either pull together or pull apart. And
Exactly.
the fact that there was enough about the pair of you that you pulled together, and
Yes.
and then at the kind of at the other side of it, where you were able to have, for want of a better term, an adult conversation, where
Mm.
it's like, look, this is the life we've got ahead of us. But and your husband's spot on, 100%. There can only be one captain, right?
Yes.
And if you're going to steer that ship, then I'll steer this ship.
Yeah.
And we can be a fleet together, but we can't both try and steer both boats. It's,
Exactly.
and genuinely well done to the pair of you for figuring that out.
Yes, yes, yeah. They were very tough years, and I credit him because, there's only 24 hours in a day. I t- all these years I took care of Susie was like having six children. She was the most wonderful, but she needed a tremendous amount of
Yeah,
attention. And then I had Beth, and then I took care of my aged mom, and then I went back to school, and then I went to work. So he kind of was, when I look back on it now, he was always in the shadows. I tried, but there was only one me,
yeah,
and he accepted that I had to do what I had to do for Susie. And I don't mean to portray a romance that was not. We had our issues. We had our
yeah, yeah. Of
issues, and
course.
we worked them out. You know.
But that's kind of the thing that I because that's really significant, because the thing that people kind of like, one of the things, if you want, with society today, is people just looking at faults. And that's why I'm
Right.
saying the fact that the pair of you were able to have an adult conversation, and your husband said, look, there can only be one captain. Because you could have
Right.
kicked back and said, you're not, no. But your husband's like,
Yeah.
you take care of this. And I think what you said is, I will take care of the finances.
Right.
And I won't
Yes.
interfere. So if you make a decision, I will support your decision.
Right.
You know, there
Right.
was no,
Exactly.
and you better get it right every time. There's no room for errors. Or you make a decision, we will work on that decision. That's where it is. But one of us has to go out
Exactly.
and work. One of us has to keep a roof over our head, and that I'll accept that responsibility. But you have to accept the other responsibility. And
Exactly.
and
And
people,
that's totally balanced. Yeah.
yeah, and people forget that today. That's how marriages work. That's how
Yeah.
friendships work. That's how relationships work. You kind of, but we're kind of in this weird world where everybody wants to be heard. Everybody needs to be felt. And sometimes people just need to shut up and get on with the tasks that are needed to be done. And sometimes,
Exactly.
and those tasks aren't glamorous. There's nothing
Right.
glamorous about, I'm going to dedicate a huge proportion of my life to this aspect of the family, and your husband is saying, and I'll make sure that this aspect of what needs to be done, food on the table, roof over our heads, I'll deal with, because he probably worked a few hours in that process of building businesses,
Yes.
and you're working
Yeah.
your hours here, and like you're saying, is it's not, it wasn't rose petaled pavements and all beautiful gardens and all of this. There was a few storms,
Hardly.
but
Yes.
but somewhere both of you realise that this is what we're going to do, and this is what's important to us.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So we continued to forge on, and as I say, Susie was in a Easter Seals program, and yeah, Susie, since and she probably takes after my husband in this regard. She is so tenacious. She has this, even as a toddler, she has this never give up attitude. I'm going to forge on. I'm going to try. And as I said to you before, she didn't walk till she was 4 years old. And all these stories are in the book. So if you read the book, If You Knew Suzy, you'll pushing past the boundary of never, you'll read all these stories. But at one point, she knew that everyone else is walking, and she didn't want to crawl anymore. She was about 2.5 years old, and we bought her one of these panda bears, these toys with the four wheels, and the toddler sits and walks on. That became her legs. The toddler became the panda became her legs. And that's how she got around. And one day we were on vacation, and somehow we were waiting for the car. I turned around, I was holding Susie, and the panda was gone. Someone took the panda. And she refused. She refused. We went out, we bought almost every other riding toy that known to man, and she would not use it. She was her tenacity was stubbornness, and stubbornness really was what really propelled her to be what she is. And the only way she would get around is if I held her under the arms and she walked. That was the only way she would get around. In fact, I have a bad back
That
today
was the
as a
first thing I
result of
thought
all.
about. I thought, yeah, I bet that was great for your back.
Yeah, I feel it every day, but I would do it all over again. One day she was about, this went on for many, many, many months. And one day, I was walking up and it was a day like today, a beautiful day. I was walking up and down the block. We live on a hill. So it really complicated things. Maybe it strengthened her muscles, but it also broke my back. We were we were walking up and down the hill, up and down the hill, and one day, a neighbor of mine put his hands out and said, "Susie, come to Uncle Sam. Come, come, come." And as I was holding her, I could feel the weight kind of shift, and she took one step, and she fell into his, and this was monumental. The whole block came out because everyone knew that, Susie had problems. The whole block came out, and from that one step, that's how she began to walk, which was something the doctors never, never expected her to do. Now, again, keep in mind, it was after years of therapy. It was after years of working with her and watching her being tied into a standing board to help her strengthen the muscles in her legs. It was years of having my baby hold out her hands to help me, mommy, please, and I couldn't because the therapist said, "Mrs. Fisher, if this girl is going to walk, you have to learn to sit on your hands." So it was years of watching her struggle, but she walked, and every day it was one more step, and the truth is, David, that's how her life evolved. Nothing was easy, nothing was nothing was expected, but she made it happen. She's an incredible young woman with when she started preschool. Now, keep in mind, I have to keep reminding everyone this was 51 years ago. So education for the handicapped at that point wasn't mandated, at least in New Jersey, till 5 years old. So
If at all.
when we, yeah, exactly. So for 5 years, was I going to let her languish, and just do nothing, and just kind of wait for the system, to assume their responsibility. So again, I found a preschool for her, and it was not covered by the district. We had to pay for it. It was very costly. We lived in empty rooms. We couldn't, we at that point it was more important that Susie go to preschool and Beth get the services that she needed. And she went. I carried her up to this preschool, and I'll never forget it. I mean, she was always an adorable little girl with her little pigtails and always smiling. And she always loved people. She always had this ebullience, this wonderful, wonderful. She exuded love. She Everybody loved to know her, was to love her. And I carried her into preschool, and you know when the school system finally did come to us at 5 years old and said, "Okay, we'll assume responsibility. We're ready to take her back." I said, "No, she's doing well. She's learning." It was a school called ECLC, and I said, "I'm not just going to rip her out of this school because now the system says we're ready to assume the responsibility." And she stayed at ECLC until she was about 7 years old. And then the director of our special education came to me and said, look, if you can help us frame a program, we really believe that bringing her back to the public school will be the best thing for her. And the principal of ECLC said to me, you know, she's got her social skills were always her strength. And she had difficulty learning, she had difficulty speaking, she had difficulty, walking, but she always loved people. And they felt that the models in the social school, in the public school, would be better for her. So, with tremendous reluctance and with the stipulation that if it didn't work, she could return to ECLC, we brought her back to the public school in an inclusionary setting. Um, and I became very entrenched in the world. I was in the world of special education. I started a PTA called Parents and Professionals for Exceptional Children. And she remained in the elementary school all through sixth grade. She was in a self contained classroom, which meant that for her academics, she was in a classroom with about 10 other children who had disabilities, who had learning issues. But for gym, music, art, she was mainstream with regular peers. And everybody loved Susie. She was a very good example for the other children because she never gave up, and she would go over to them and she would say, you can do this, not as clearly as I'm talking to you. Don't give up. You have to keep trying. I mean, she was the cheerleader for other children with disabilities.
Just
And as I say, I became very involved in special education PTAs, and started programs for children with special needs. And everything was more or less copacetic until we got to the middle school. And if you know anything about middle school girls, they are tough. They are tough. And Susie became very isolated. She became the as hard as I tried, and the psychologist at the middle school kept saying to me, she's alone. She's not. I had written an article that was published. It's called when inclusion means exclusion.
yes.
And what was happening to Susie was, and the psychologist said to me, why don't you just follow her one day? Why don't you just see what her life is like, what her day is like? And I kept saying, well, you have to just do more. We'll assign a buddy to her. We'll go into classrooms. We'll do sensitivity training. She has her God-given right to be in a mainstream. And what I learned, David, what her God-given right was to be in an environment that embraced her and loved her, and to be accepted and to be understood. And I learned this I did go and I watched her one day. I stood behind a tree, I stood behind a barrier, and I saw that once she left that self contained classroom, she was alone. She sat in the lunchroom, and there were girls to the right and girls to the left, and she sat alone. No one came over and incorporated her in the conversation. And then I watched her after school. I was going to pick her up. And Susie was always very brave. She never complained. She always tried to be the best she could be. And there were groups of girls to her right, there were groups of girls to her left, and she stood there alone trying to look like she was okay. I'm fine alone. And then as soon as she saw me, I came out of from behind the tree. She ran to me, and I said to her, Susie, how would you like to visit ECLC again? Because they did have a continuing program through 21. And she said, Mommy, please, please let me go. And when I took her for her visit that day, I will never forget it. I waited for her. She took a tour of the school. She walked around, and at the end of the tour, she ran into my arms and she said, "Mommy, please let me come here. I could be a cheerleader. I could be part of the Key Club. I could go to a prom. I
Yeah.
could be run for student council." Those things would have never happened for her in the public school,
Yeah.
you know. And it was for me an epiphany because it wasn't about me at that point. It was about what was best for her. And she did go. She did go to ECLC and she did do all those things that I just mentioned. And she was so thrilled. She ran for student council as the treasurer and she stood in front of 200 people, speech impairment. She has a very rare eye problem. She couldn't look straight on, but she stood there and made a speech and she said, "Please vote for me. Vote for the honey with your money." And she won
Yeah.
treasurer of the class. Now, that again would not have
No.
happened at the Livingston High School. So I say this, and I want to emphasize it's very important. I am not against inclusion. If it works, it's wonderful. If it works, by all means, forge ahead. But it's not a one. Our system should not have a one size fits all model.
Yeah, I remember experiences when I was at the day centre, and there's this concept that, which is where I think inclusion comes from, is we're all equal. And I used to say,
Yes.
we're not equal.
We're not.
If we were equal, we wouldn't be in a day centre, and they wouldn't need support, and
Right.
they wouldn't need to be. But that doesn't mean we can't be treated equally. But
Right.
but the
Right.
reason I'm here is because they need somebody to advocate for them. They need somebody who will take the time to understand them and help them to make an informed decision. And that's because
Right.
we're not
Exactly.
equal. Because I'm going to get in my car, go home, pay my bills. They're going to go back to a supported living environment, go back to their parents. But and I think that's the thing where the lines got blurred, where we have
Yes.
to treat everybody equally. No.
Yes.
Everybody has the right to be treated equally, but you have to understand it's because we're not equal.
Right.
Not everybody is 6 foot. Not everybody is handsome and skinny. Not everybody has a good sense of humour. Not everybody is funny. Do you know what I mean? Not everybody's blonde. Not everybody's brown hair. It's just we're all different. But
Right.
and I think and again, I think people are trying to do things with good intentions. But
Yes.
trying to
Yes.
expect a group of teenagers to take on somebody they don't understand, they don't know, it's difficult for them because they're trying to figure out their own lives, and you're asking them to
Right.
figure out someone else's, and
Exactly.
they're not mean kids. They're just like, oh, I don't even know who I am today, and so
Right.
unless they have some special connection to the person next to them, they to be honest, I always remember I was talking to an old teacher a few months ago, and we did this thing when I was at school where we spent an afternoon with teenagers with disabilities, and we had to spend and afterwards, the next lesson we had to reflect on it.
Yes.
And I was honest about how awkward I felt and how I didn't like it.
Of course.
But I did really well because there was a point like quite quickly in where I realised they felt the same. And for some reason, the fact that the person I was with didn't know how to deal with me and I didn't know how to deal with them, it kind of bonded us as something in common.
Yes.
But it wasn't our similarities, it was what
Right.
our differences that I was like, oh right, okay. So we then just kind of like the best that they talked about it, and the best that I could relate back, and we were then able actually to get on and spend the afternoon together.
Right.
But it was just, there was almost like I said, me and this teacher were just kind of laughing about how the conclusion was. It's just like, well, you're a bit awkward, and this person was like, well, I'm finding you a bit awkward, to be honest, because you're not what I'm used to either.
Yes.
And it's just
Yes.
like, oh right, we can work on this then. We're both awkward to each other. And but if we hadn't had that realization, I would have just I'd have always been one step away.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. And that's why, for me, it was a learning curve too,
Yeah.
because, I was so entrenched and so involved and philosophically, I believed in, it's a God-given right. But what I've come to realize is the God-given right is to be accept. We all choose our friends.
Yeah.
We all choose what makes us happy. Why do we think the disabled have to be in our world or our classes?
But
You know,
that's it, because you'll see the same people on social media saying you don't know what someone's journey is, you don't know what they're
yes,
going through, you don't know, and then whilst promoting you don't know what struggles is going on behind someone's door, they will say you need to be more inclusive because this person needs more. And it's like
absolutely. Yeah,
I've got a life full of burden. My
yes,
my bag is full of shit that I just can't
yeah,
cope with right now, and I'm struggling to get out of
right,
bed. And you're demanding more from me
yes,
for somebody I don't know. And
exactly. Yes.
it's life isn't that simple. People,
No, nothing is that simple, David.
no, it isn't. So when did Ben come along?
Okay, so that was what I was just getting to. So we Susie went on to ECLC and she was doing very well. She saw Ben go to sleepaway camp. I mean, that's what her frame of reference was, and she wanted to go to sleepaway camp. And I said, she's going to be away from me. We're connected at the hips, you know. I can't let her go to
Got a
sleepaway
helicopter
camp.
parent.
I was, but I admit it, guilty as charged. And that's when my husband actually he jumped in and he reminded me, this isn't about you,
Yeah,
this is about her. But I do, and I want to tell you the story about Sleepaway Camp because it's a very important
yeah, of
story.
course,
But
please do.
before I go, I want to tell you about Ben. So I always wanted a third child, and my husband he was afraid. Understandably, he did not want. He had his two girls, and that was enough for him. And with a little arm twisting, he finally agreed that if we did gene testing and we went to try to find out again what Susie's issues were. So my brother, who I mentioned
Yeah,
before, is the head of genetics at University of Pennsylvania Hospital. He brought us down for extensive gene testing to make sure that none of Susie's problems were genetic. And this now we're going back. Ben is 44, so we're going back about 46 years ago. We went to University of Pennsylvania. We went through extensive. Susie went. I went. My husband went. They even took blood from Beth because gene testing is done through blood testing. And anyway, after many weeks, we went together and met with them, and we were told there is no reason to believe that any
yeah,
of Susie's problems were genetic. No, there's just nothing to
yeah,
indicate. Etiology unknown. There were a lot of theories. I had eaten something when I was 3 months pregnant and
yeah.
had food poison. There were a lot of theories, but nothing could be proven. So, with again some more subtle arm twisting, thank God we didn't know. I went ahead. We went ahead,
Just
and
quickly. Do I get the impression that when you want something, you're quite hard work?
my husband would say, "I'll answer that question."
Sorry, carry on.
We went ahead and thank God, about a year later, Ben was born. It was probably the best decision, well, not the best, but one of the best decisions we ever made because he was a darling, darling, healthy baby who has brought us so much joy. And as I said before, is Susie's he's been, in fact, just as a quick story, he became Susie's coach for Special Olympics.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
Susie, he's a tough coach, no mercy, you
Yeah,
know. And he coached her through Special Olympics, and his motto was, you have to keep going. And she would stop and say, Benny, give me 5 minutes. He said, I'll give you two, and I'm timing, and then let's go, more sit-ups. And she went on and she won 3 medals in Special Olympics.
Oh,
And that's what,
fantastic.
so between Beth as her teacher and certainly, as one of her greatest role models, and Ben as her coach and her very, very dear friend. He has a heart of gold, and he's also there to embrace her when things are tough, which I'll talk to you about. She just adores both of them, and I'm very blessed that they are her sister and brother. But so that was when Ben came into the picture. Much, lot of convincing, and but thank goodness, it was one of our best decisions. But going back to Camp Northwood, which I would like to share with
Please
you, and
do.
then so Susie had decided she saw Ben go to sleepaway camp, and she decided she wanted to go to sleepaway. I said, "What kind of what? No, absolutely not." And my husband said to me, "You, this is when, I need someone to push me because I tend to be a helicopter." Did you get
I may
that?
have mentioned, I may have slipped that in.
You got that impression? And we went all over. We looked for camps with who accept special needs children, and we found Camp Northwood. And I sent it was in Utica, New York. I had sent all Susie's files up to Camp Northwood, and they called me and they said, "You know what? She's not appropriate for our camp. She's much too involved, too many problems, blah 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 blah." And I said to him, his name was Jim Ryan. I said, "Jim, do me a favor. Let me come up with her. Let me fly up to the camp. You meet her. You don't turn her down by reports. You meet her, spend some time with her, and if you don't think she's appropriate for your camp, we'll part ways, we'll shake hands, and you'll never hear from me again." So we did that. I said to Al, "Got to get a plane. I got to get up there." He said, and it was a prop plane. Now, if you know, I hate to fly. I am desperately. When I saw this plane, and I said, "Susie, only for you." I closed my eyes. I held my breath. We got on this prop plane. She said to me, "Mommy, I'll hold your hand." I said, "I need you to hold both hands." We flew up in this prop plane, and Jim picked us up at the airport. And as soon as he met Susie, she said, "Mr. Ryan," I mean, this is Susie. She is such a people person. "Mr. Ryan, thank you for having me. I can't wait to see the camp." We got into the car. We met everyone. And as soon as she met everyone, it was the same. "Hi." And she'd put her hand out. She'd shake everyone's hand. "I'm Susie. I hope I can come here. I love to swim." And then she said that to the swim instructor. And then she said she saw the aquaplane instructor and the soccer. "Hi, I can't wait to do this." Now, I want you to keep in mind, Dave, she doesn't manipulate. She doesn't know how to lie
No.
or
Yeah.
manipulate. That's higher level thinking. We learned that later on. This was all from her heart. It's who she
Yeah.
is. She just is a sincere, and she loved the camp. She wanted to come, and she loved the activities. So after spending the day there, he drove us back, and he said to me, he looked at me and he said, "Not only do I want her to come to camp, but I don't ever want you to allow anyone to judge her from a report, because you really don't get to know
No, you
Susie
don't.
till you meet Susie." And I remember saying to him, "Jim, I never have let anyone, I never will let anyone judge her from a report, but I'm so glad you gave us this opportunity." And she spent 12 wonderful, wonderful summers at Camp Northwood.
12.
And
Wow.
yep, yep, it became her refuge. It was just everybody knew Susie. I mean, I don't want to keep saying it, but you have to know her to understand she's God's child.
Yeah, no,
She
I
has.
do. People. It's really difficult to understand for people if they don't have somebody with a disability, or they don't know someone sort of intimately and closely like that. That you can you think you see something, and and you can because we're physical people, we see, like, and this sounds like no shit, Sherlock, but we see with our eyes, and we don't know how blind that makes us. And
exactly.
And that when you work closely with people, and you realise the depth of the character and their personality traits and their sense of humours, and they can be really insightful, and they're as complex as you and I, but the difference is you would never mistreat me in the sense of dismissing me.
Right.
Whereas you can see somebody in a wheelchair, you can see somebody with a physical deformity, or a strange sound to their voice, and you immediately go down a sort of tunnel where your vision narrows, and you don't. And it's no one's fault. It's a completely natural reflex, because, and this is probably what I was trying to communicate earlier and did madly, is I realised I didn't know. I knew I didn't know, and I was out of my bounds, and I was out of my comfort zone, and I just, in that moment, I didn't know what to do with this person, and and in that moment of I don't know, it's almost like I don't know what to do with this thing. It's becoming an inanimate object, but it's more complex than that because it's moving and talking, whereas when you and I were prepping to start recording, you and I were having just a random conversation, and it was really easy, and both of us just instinctively know how to do that. We've got experience as adults, but when you've got somebody in front of you and you're judging them on a physical disability, or because you have some awareness they have a disability, we just kind of default into this kind of clumsy mode unintentionally. And we think it's harder. It is harder to get to know them, but it's also just different. And all it takes is I always find that sometimes, and I do this on the podcast. I will, and I'll be honest about it. I do this on the podcast. I will say to somebody, I'm not sure how to articulate this, and it might sound a bit clumsy. And that's basically me prepping you to say, I'm just going to say what's on my mind, and hopefully you'll be all right with that. And it's sometimes you just have to kind of jump in with both feet, and I think one of the things that people misunderstand is they like you say, Suzy, for those, when she arrived, and you made a really important point, she doesn't have the ability or to be manipulative, so she can only be open from the heart. Whereas you and I are used to have almost a guard up that this person might manipulate me.
Yes.
And so we're trying to operate from different levels. And
exactly.
But the other thing we assume is that, well, I might do something wrong, or they won't understand me. Okay, figure it out.
Exactly.
And it is weird because you can go in and order coffee from a barista, and if the order's wrong, you'll happily tell them the order's wrong. Put somebody in front of you with a disability and they stand there like they're disabled and they freeze. Well, you can still talk to them. They can listen. Do you know what I mean? If you doubt it, prod them. Just give them a poke and see what they do. Do you know what I mean? that they are human beings and they can respond. They can interact.
Absolutely.
But we freeze.
They can feel.
Yeah, exactly. They can feel. But like you say, if she's growing up with an older brother and a younger sister, an older sister and a younger brother, and a brother that's like, you're not done. You can have 2 minutes, then get your arse in gear. You're not winning medals with this attitude.
Absolutely.
She'll have a sense of humour. She'll know how to say no.
Right, exactly, exactly. No, she loves to laugh, and she'll say, "Okay, Benny, I'm up, let's go." And he said, "Okay, if you don't get going, you're doing 10 laps." So she's grown up. That's how she's grown up. With kid gloves, but yet they know when to take them off.
No, it's important. It's important. When did you decide to write the book?
Okay, so this is before, because I want to get this point across. I This has been a lifelong goal of mine. It's to write my book about Susie, and I say this because I just want to get into the next part. It's not only about her special needs, and this is what makes her story so extraordinary. I'll fast forward. She went on to go to a supervised living program. She saw her sister go to college. She wanted to go. She didn't go to college, but she wound up to it. We found, and you have to read the book. It's all in the book
Yeah,
because
of course.
a lot more stories. She went to a school called Maplebrook School and learned life skills. And then she came home and went to a program called Jesby House, which is near us. It's only about 20 minutes away, and it's a supervised living program for young adults. When she was there about a year, I did not like the way she looked. I just didn't like the way she looked. And she was doing everything. She worked in a daycare. She was doing everything, but I could tell she was pushing. And I went to the doctor and he said to me, "Stop looking at her so much. You're being a nutty mother and he said, but I'll do some blood work. And he did some blood work. She was slightly anemic. But he said, it's no big deal. We'll probably give her iron pills and come back in 6 weeks. I came back in 6 weeks. She was still anemic. And he said, is she taking the iron pills? I said, yes. When you tell Susie to do
Yeah.
something, you can be sure that it's going to happen. She does not digress. She's very rule oriented, as is my husband again. But so, well, he said, you know what? My pediatrician said to me, you're not going to leave it alone. You're going to drive me crazy. You're going to drive yourself crazy. I'm going to send you to a hematologist. So we did, and she went for more extensive testing. And do you know when you remember when you get a certain phone call? You
Yeah.
know where you were?
Yeah.
You were sitting, and I got a call from the hematologist who said, Jane, I am blown away. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, what's wrong? I thought the first thing that came to my mind was leukemia. He said, Susie's creatinine is very, very high. I said, what's creatinine? He said, Susie, it's a measure of kidney function. And Susie is end stage kidney failure. I said, Doctor, what are you talking about? How could she be in kidney failure? And he said, she is, and we have to get her right in and do more tests. Well, it turns out, and not only did she have all these special needs that she fought her whole life, she was 24 years old at this point, we found out that she had small, underdeveloped kidneys, and she needed a kidney transplant. So not only did she have all these other issues, but now we had another whole chapter of medical issues. The only thing that made sense was I was her mother. I was going to give her life back. I was going to give her my kidney. It's a no-brainer. And it turned out that Susie had type O blood type. Type O is the universal donor. And type O can give to anyone, but type O can only get from type O.
Yeah.
I was type A.
Uh,
So I was ruled out, you know. Of course, Al, her father, was type O.
he
And
keeps getting dragged
he's,
back into this, doesn't he?
he's getting right pulled back. The non captain is getting
Yeah.
right pulled back. And it turns out he's had 7 kidney stones. So he was not considered a donor. So here was Susie again in the wrong line. And we needed to get a kidney. We were desperate. She was very, very ill. And as the weeks went by, she became more sick. She needed to go on dialysis. I don't know how much you know about I hope you don't know a lot about dialysis, but it's a very, very arduous process and
Yeah.
very, very debilitating. Anyway, long story short, we were flying all over the country because to get on a list for a kidney, you have to physically go there. So we were going all over to every hospital that was a transplant and getting her on lists. And finally, she was getting sicker and sicker on dialysis. And finally, there was a kidney at St. Barnabas, as it turns out, in Livingston. And when I got the call, Susie was 24 years old. This was from a 62-year-old woman. who was very altruistic in donating her kidney. But I said to the doctor, how do you put a 64-year-old kidney in a 24-year-old? And he said, you have to get her off dialysis
Yeah.
and take it because you don't get choices.
Mm.
There's a tremendous shortage. So now Susie's life, not only did we educate people with special needs, but now we were in the world of organ donation. So we took the kidney, of course, and it kept her off dialysis for about 10 years. She had a host of other medical problems, which are also in the book. We don't have time, but she was
Oh,
very, very ill.
you and I nearly didn't turn up today. We have all the time.
Yeah, it has been a journey, and David, I have watched her melt the hardest of hearts. She's been so sick, but she worries about other people. She worries about, we've been in hospitals and there have been people who have had transplants and they're in bed, they're sick, they're in pain, and she stops at their, she has tubes in every orifice. And she says, come on, you got to get out of bed. You got to walk. And the person says, "Oh, I'm in too much." No, I'm with her because I never leave her. When she's in the hospital, so I witness all this. And she says, "Come on, you can walk with me." And I'm looking at him saying, "Susie, how they gonna walk with you? You have tubes all over." But she gets them to cut out of bed, follow her, just walk a little bit to the next door. I have watched her melt. There's a surgeon who basically came into the room and they don't look at her, they don't talk to her because they don't think she's going to understand that much. So they talk to me and I, and I ask a lot of questions. If Susie were here, she'd say, Mom, you ask too many questions. And the surgeon was ready to leave the room. It was a beautiful Sunday morning. And I said, Dr. Smith, please, one more question. I need to know this. And she says, Mom, let him go home already. He's got children. He's got a wife. It's Sunday. Let him go home. And all of a sudden, he pivots around and he looks at me and he says, what planet does she come from? And I said to him, one that you and I will never know.
Yeah.
And from that minute on, this man, who the nurses said to me, oh my God, he has teeth. We've never seen him smile. But from this day on, this man, whenever he walked in, he would cry, hey kid, how you doing? He was a totally different person. And this is what I've seen her do, David, to people. Through the purity of her heart and the goodness of her soul, she just makes us all better people.
Bless her.
And the bottom line is that, and I am trying to move fast.
No, no.
Or
Just take your time.
the bottom line is that the kidney lasted about 10 years, and then that kidney failed, and we were back to square one. And she was very ill again, and we needed another kidney. So this is a young woman that has gone through such travails, fighting her sentence in life every day of her life, only to come to this point where she has so many medical problems. And she did get another kidney transplant. In between the transplants, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So she needed a total thyroidectomy. Now, I know this sounds hard to believe that one person can go through all this, but she did, and it happened.
I'm
And
just
with it
what the thing
all,
that popped in my head is that, depending on your faith and religion, but
yes,
if you're, I'm a Catholic, so
yes.
if you're going to get to St. Peter's gates, when Susie gets up there, she might be saying, "I need to have a word with somebody because somebody was taking the piss."
She has. It's interesting you should say that because yesterday we had she had a very difficult day with and she wrote to our clergyman. She said, "Where is God? Where is God?" She's had so much, David, and she stays so spirited and she stays so ebullient and she stays so kind and she stays so selfless. But every once in a while, she's, Mommy, I don't know if I could do this much longer. And you know what? Watching her struggle and watching her suffer, how much can a person take? She truly is my Jobus. You
Yeah.
know, Job, who,
Yeah.
and yet she pulls herself back. This morning, she said to me, Mommy, whatever we have to do, we're going to do it. So she backtracks a little bit, gets down, but then she reaches and she goes to the reserve that she stored and she moves forward. And this is why the book, and there's one more element, and then I'm going to tell you about the book. This is why a book, I think, is so important for people to read. Because if you have challenges, if you have, and we all do
Yeah,
at
cool. Yeah,
some
we do.
point, it is the most, and she is an example of how you can face your hardships, live with your hardships, accept your hardships, and move forward. You know, somehow find that as I call it, reserve to move forward. There's one more piece of the book. So now we have someone who has special needs, has had all these medical problems. About 10 years ago, my brother, who, as I told you, who was the head of genetics at Pennsylvania, called me and said, Jay, I want you to go have an MRI of Susie's brain. I said, what are you talking about? He said, there's been a discovery of a very rare syndrome called Joubert syndrome. And Susie seems to have all the characteristics. But there's one marker, and it's all the people with Joubert's have what they call this molar tooth marker in their brain. And I want to see if she has it. Now, Susie has had MRIs of her brain, but no one ever looked to look at
Yeah.
for a molar tooth. It turns out, David, that not only did she have the marker, but we went back to University of Pennsylvania Hospital. My husband and I had blood tests. Susie had blood tests, and for for a child to have Joubert's, both parents. Now it's a very rare gene. It's for one parent, but both parents have to have the gene. The odds of both parents having this gene are 1 in millions. Susie won the lottery. We both have this very rare gene, and she has this very rare gene called Joubert syndrome. And she's the oldest in the world that's known to have Joubert syndrome, because while other people might have it, it wasn't known. It
Yeah.
wasn't identified. So she's the oldest in the world, and it is the reason for all her special needs. It is the reason for her kidney failure. It is the reason for all the problems that she has faced. And we had no idea. We never would have had my darling son Ben had we known. So I'm glad, in some ways, I'm glad we didn't know
Yeah, of
44 years,
course. Yeah.
you know, because my husband never would have had a third child. And our story is so incredible, because you asked me, now I could tell you why I wrote the book, because there are so many facets to her story, and it's been my lifelong dream. It's not even a dream, it's been a lifelong mission to write Susie's story, because I feel I wanted to memorialize her life.
Yeah.
I wanted to know how everyone should know Aunt Susie. Everyone should know her challenges, her travails, her hardships, but they should also know her triumphs. They should also know about this incredible human being who has taught so many people, how to be better people, kinder people.
Just
And
quickly,
that's why I wrote her story.
do you not also think that applies to you and your family?
I do. I do. I mean, I feel that I think Beth and Ben would have been wonderful people regardless, but I think it's made us all much better
Yeah. Did
people.
you not, like I was saying, it's like, and I genuinely not trying to take any light away from Susie, But when you listen to everything that Suzy has gone through, she's gone through it with a family. So you could almost say that when she asks about why is God doing this to me, it's because he's put you with the family that can do it with you. Do
Yes.
you know what I mean? There's like, as I've been listening to you, you know, there's everything that your husband has done, Beth has done, and Ben has done. It's you and you yourself. You've all championed each other, and you've all championed Suzy, and just as a shining light to what families are capable of doing. You're the brightest out there.
I'm very humble, and so I don't, and maybe even a little self-effacing, but I agree. I agree. Suzy was sent to us. I truly believe she's a celestial being
Yeah,
who was sent to us to love, to protect, to champion for, and to teach. Most important, to teach us all how to be better people. And that's our job, to protect her and let her continue to do God's work. Whether you're a religious person or not religious person, Catholic, Jewish,
yeah,
Muslim, whatever you are, it's unimportant. What's important is to look at her life, to read about her life, and to find the strength to know that you can also learn lessons from an individual who was pretty much thought to be put away, you know. And it's an incredible story about an incredible woman, and I do believe it's she's an angel on this earth who has affected us all.
yeah. And
I
I
hope you
just,
will.
like I said, I just, like I said, I genuinely, not trying to take anything away from Suzy, but I just think there's a space to acknowledge that the whole family, all of you, have
Yes,
been absolutely remarkable in all of this.
they have been. They have been, and I'm very proud of them.
Yeah,
And I do.
and
They shaped Susie's life.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and it's a full credit to them, because there's plenty of families out there that have everything going for them that can't stand the sight of each other, and to have a
Yeah.
family that just pulls together is,
Yes.
like, as corny as it sounds, it is what makes the world a better place.
Yes. Yes. No, it is, and it is corny, but it is true. I've seen it. I've
Yeah,
witnessed it. And they are to this day. I mean, and that's not to say that, there haven't been times when they might have felt, what about me, mom? And I
mm.
did. I tried. David, I've learned, and this has been a motto: fair is not always equal.
No, this is what I was saying about Lillian, my niece.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
everybody. You try to do the best. You try,
Right.
but life isn't fair, and
Right.
it's not equal. And your family, for all of the blessings that come from the lessons that you could learn from Suzy, and the bravery and the courage that she shows people.
Yes.
There's curses that
Yes.
everybody else has to take, you know but and
Absolutely.
it's, do you want to live with your life looking at the blessings, or do you want to bury yourself in the curses? And
Right.
that's why I'm saying is, as a family, I think it's remarkable that you kind of always been able to take that next step. And what I think is wonderful as well, and absolutely beautiful, is you never lost faith, not as a
No.
family, not in Suzy, not in God. And a couple of times when you were talking, what kept popping in my head is the prayer of walking through the shadow of death. I feel no
Yes.
I fear no evil, and sorry, through the shadow of the valley of the death. And I have that on my phone, because if I'm ever in a
Yes.
dark place, that's what I read. And yeah, and there's a couple of times it's just like, and
Yes.
Suzy kind of reminds me of that staff that you lean on, you hold out in front as a light to show everybody.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. It's a joke. My Beth and Ben have said, Mom, don't say that to people because they'll think you're nuts. But I've always said that whether you believe it, she's like if you read the Bible, and I'm not a devout anything, but I do know a little bit. And, I've always said if you read the Bible, all the biblical characters who are the most influential, Jesus, Moses,
Yeah.
Noah, on and on. It's not that she's kind of like them
No,
in my mind. They've all had hard lives. They've all had hard lives.
everybody
And
you've just mentioned back in the day, you can guarantee somebody thought they were crazy nutters.
yes,
Somebody would have
yes.
said, Jesus is a nut job, watch him. Do you know what I mean? Whereas other people are like, actually, this guy's talking a lot of sense, and being around him brings something out in all of us.
Right, right.
And like you said, going back to summer camp when Suzy turned up and everybody she meet heartfelt.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna look, if you and it was interesting from the very beginning. To, if you'll let me come, do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
not now I'm here. You got it. Just if this works for
Right.
you, and then the owner of the camp, my apologies, just forgotten his name, said, don't ever let anybody judge her from a report.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
And it's that thing you're talking about. Well, when you meet her, there's something that's
Right,
and
right. And that's been
and the surgeon, that insight where she's like, Mum, you gotta
Yeah.
let it go, man. The guy's got his own life. Do you know?
Right.
It's a Sunday, for crying out loud. Let the man be. Let him have some peace. He's not Dad.
Yes,
He's allowed to have a
exactly.
peaceful afternoon. And and it is remarkable, and well done, like seriously well done, and congratulations on writing the book, and hopefully people will take it on board, and because we
Thank
do all sometimes just need a little poke and a little prod that, hey,
Yes, yes, exactly. And that's why, when name of the book, If You Knew Suzy, Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never, she was prognosticated for never doing any of these things. And not only did she do them, but she proved that never doesn't exist for her.
Yeah.
She was going to find a way, and we stood behind her, and I'd like to think we were all the wind beneath her wings,
Yeah. No, but you are.
She's made, and I
Sorry, can I just? You do realise you've done a great job, don't you?
believe that God sent her to me, to us, to do what we did. I believe that she's kind of taught, she's given me a voice. I was a very quiet, demure.
I bet your husband
married
misses those days.
Yes, he married one woman and he got a whole different life with another one. So, and that is really because of Suzy's story.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got to just. I know, like you said, you're obviously reluctant to accept any kind of like praise in this, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that Suzy was a gift from God and then not think that God would probably look at you and say, you did all right, kid. You did exactly what we hoped you would do.
Thank you. As I say, I try, I'm humble, and I believe it was my destiny to be blessed to have Suzy, and to Beth and Ben.
Yeah.
And now our mission is to help other people. That's our mission, to help other people. This book is not about fame. It's not about monetary remuneration. It's about trying to. That's what Suzy's life has been all about.
Yeah.
We've started programs. We've taught. We've done so much to help people with organ donation, and now we're trying to inspire.
So
And I
where
hope
can
that-
people find the book and find out more?
The book is available on Amazon website and Barnes and Noble website. I also have a web page. If I can help anyone. It's janemfisher.com. And I'm available to try. Suzy and I are both available to speak to audiences, to speak to groups, to hopefully get our book out there to help other people. That's our goal, and I truly believe that's all part of God's mission.
So, I'm going to finish up, and I'll put Jane. Is it janemfisher.com?
It's Jane, JANEM as in Mary,
Yeah.
Fischer, FISCHER.com.
I'll make sure that's in the description so that people can find it. But just
Okay.
before we go, because I like to ask this completely random question, I want you to imagine you have a time machine. The time machine is a car, right? What car would the time machine be? Where would you go? And what music would be playing on the radio?
Oh my goodness.
It's a little different to what you normally ask, I know.
Yes. What kind of car would I drive?
Anything you want.
I'm not a car person, but I would probably drive a car that has 3 rows
Yeah.
so that I could fit a lot of people, fit the whole family and the grandchildren.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
grandchildren definitely got to come in there.
they get in the
Jesus.
front
Heaven
seat.
forbid the grandchildren miss out on something.
Absolutely. That would be the most important. I don't care about fancy. I don't care about just the 3 rows so I can fit the grandchildren and the children.
So we've got a
That's the
minibus.
car. I'm sorry.
We've got a minibus.
A minibus. Perfect. Love it. Oh, I see myself driving.
Yeah, we're there. So where are we going and
With it.
what's playing on the radio?
That I would, well, some of Susie's our songs, Climb Every Mountain. When she was younger, it was You and Me Against the World. That Hero. That's our song. Mariah
Yeah.
Carey's Hero. We certainly have so many. Uh, hey child, things are going to get easier. You don't want me to sing. Those are the inspirational songs. I could go on and on. In fact, it's interesting you should ask me because every chapter in our book is a name of a song that Susie
Nice.
and I have.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes,
That is really nice.
yes. Um, the Wind Beneath My Wings. Yeah, and Susie always had a very, very close relationship with my mom and my the whole family, and she always loved to sing because she adored my mom. She adored my brothers. My younger brother, my older brother, their children. They've always included Susie in their family, and she's always loved the song "Family." We are family.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And where would you go? What time?
where would I go? That's I would take a vote and find out where everyone else wants to go. But that's probably what I would do. But let's see, where would I go? I'd probably go to a wonderful amusement park with everyone and watch everyone, the grandchildren, the children, all spread out and have a wonderful time, a wonderful day together. That's
And
what I would do.
and a wonderful day together is a beautiful place to stop. Thank you very much for your time, Jay.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. And I surely hope that we could help other people and inspire them while they read the book, after they read the book. And if I could do anything for anyone, please. That's my mission in life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's Jane and her daughter Suzy. And I can't stress enough that I agree with everything that Jane said. Everything about disabilities, about people, about what's in somebody's heart. But just what an incredible and remarkable family. Just genuinely, yeah, it blows my mind. And just also there's that element where Jane just doesn't understand how remarkable she is and what a phenomenal job she's done. And I would apply that to the whole family, everybody. And please do check out the website janemfisher.com and check out the book, find out about Suzy. And as Jane very generously said, if you think she might be able to give you some help or support, reach out, contact her. And on that note, for everybody that does reach out, for everybody that supports, comments, likes and shares the podcast, thank you very much. I wouldn't be doing it without you, and I can't thank you enough. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.